And now, your daily dose of debate, breaking news, and uncensored views. This is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day in this greatest nation on God's green earth, a great day of dramatic confrontations, one of which involving Hillary Clinton, now testifying before the Oversight and Government Reform Committee of the House of Representatives. What is she testifying about? Well, it's inevitably Jeffrey Epstein. There's lots of Jeffrey Epstein news today, news involving foreign officials in Norway and Great Britain, and yes, here in the United States. We will get to all of that. We will also be talking about whether there is a third way in American politics that is not either Trump deranged, as President Trump would have it, people who are viciously and sometimes passionately anti-Trump or pro-Trump. There are other issues in American politics that can unify people. We'll be speaking to Lanny Davis, who is one of those Democrats who has maintained friendly relationship with lots of Republicans, including me. Lanny Davis, former aide to President Clinton, and a longtime Democratic Party operative and influential Washington lawyer, will be joining us on the Medved Show. We also have a question about Kamala Harris, suggesting, well, she has not taken herself out of the presidential race for 2028, despite a faltering of support. We will deal with that, and a controversial nominee for Surgeon General of the United States, who is not a working doctor. So what is she exactly, and where does she stand on some of the issues that have polarized the country, that have been brought up by the guy who would be her boss to an extent? Not talking about President Trump here, who actually makes the appointment, but to Robert Kennedy Jr., who runs the Department of Health and Human Services in the Trump cabinet. Meanwhile, in terms of Hillary Clinton in the news, in her opening statement to the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee today, Hillary said, "I had no idea about their criminal activities." Who's she talking about? She's talking about Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and Ghislaine Maxwell and other people who were involved in the world of Epstein. "I had no idea about their criminal activities," says Hillary. Is that possible? Is that plausible? Do you believe her testimony? She says, "I do not recall ever encountering Mr. Epstein. I never flew on his plane or visited his island, homes, or offices." That is entirely plausible, and it seems to have been verified by information that's been gathered so far. "I have nothing to add to that," she said. She also added that she has spent her life advocating for women and girls, citing work she did as First Lady and then later as Secretary of State of the United States. After laying out her past work to battle sex trafficking, she said that the committee compelled her to testify, quote, "fully aware that I have no knowledge that would assist your investigation," in order to distract attention from President Trump's actions. What actions? She said if this committee is serious about learning the truth about Epstein's trafficking crimes, it would not only rely on press gaggles to get answers from our current president on his involvement, it would ask him directly under oath about the tens of thousands of times he shows up in the Epstein files, Hillary Clinton added. If the majority were serious, it would not waste time on fishing expeditions. There is too much that needs to be done. What is being held back? Who is being protected? And why the cover-up, Hillary added. There's something about this administration's attitude towards this, which I think leads us to conclude they have something to hide. We don't. we've been willing to say whatever we know. Who is the we? She is implying the we includes her husband, Bill Clinton, former president, and herself. Meanwhile, this a story from the New York Times, Borge Brende, who is the chief executive and president of the World Economic Forum, said today that he would resign after an independent investigation by the group into his ties to the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The group that's investigating it is the World Economic Forum. His resignation came less than a month after the release of the latest batch of files related to Mr. Epstein appeared. And they appeared in public and seemed to show that Mr. Brende, a former foreign minister of Norway, had stayed in contact with the disgraced American financier long after Mr. Epstein had been convicted of soliciting a minor for prostitution. The forum, best known as the organizer of an annual summit for world leaders in Davos, Switzerland, everybody knows about that. Not as many people are aware of the title of the World Economic Forum. Well, that's what it has to do with, was that Davos gathering every year. The forum said in a statement officially from its headquarters that the independent review had not found additional concerns beyond what had been previously disclosed. Mr. Brende said that after careful consideration, he wanted the forum to continue its work without distractions. Earlier this week, there was yet another casualty, prominent casualty, a casualty of Lawrence Summers, who was at one time the president of Harvard. He left that position. He still has a teaching position at Harvard. At least he did. He resigned because of extreme and lengthy and embarrassing associations with Jeffrey Epstein. Also, The Hill is reporting that the Department of Justice said that it is reviewing whether any documents from the Epstein files were improperly withheld from the public. That includes notes from an interview with a woman who made allegations against Trump. Now, those notes are explosive because her allegations involve gross sexual activity while she was way underage, below the age of not just 18, but below the age of 16, some of those activities. And those allegations against President Trump, have they been suppressed so far, improperly withheld, as The Hill reports from the public? Meanwhile, former Vice President Kamala Harris said she might run for president again in 2028. Her comments come as speculation is mounted around her future, and as she has led in a few polls of a hypothetical Democratic field. Part of what this reflects is the California problem, because, of course, she was the Attorney General of California. She was a senator from California, a governor of California. In fact, the current governor, Gavin Newsom, is also considered a very likely Democratic contender. And with neither of them able to automatically capture the crucial home state, California, advantage or support in a struggle for the Democratic nomination, it is not at all clear that she would have a viable candidacy. Meanwhile, there is also an announcement today from another potential candidate in 2028, an almost certain candidate, Vice President J.D. Vance. What did he have to say? We will get to that and to much more coming up on a busy Michael Medved show. And here on the Medved show, I had mentioned that there is a new announcement from Vice President J.D. Vance. What is that announcement? It is that the Trump administration would temporarily halt some Medicaid funding to the state of Minnesota. That because of fraud concerns. This is part of what President Trump described as a war on fraud. He has put Vice President J.D. Vance in charge. It is considered to be a stepping stone toward his candidacy to succeed President Trump, to take over after President Trump leaves the presidency, because he is constitutionally required to do so under the 22nd Amendment. The fraud concerns in Minnesota, this part of what J.D. Vance has described as an aggressive crackdown on misuse of public funds, particularly in that state. Vance made the announcement together with Dr. Mehmet Oz, who, in contrast to other medical news, has been a licensed and official practicing physician for much of his career, in addition to a media figure and a defeated senatorial candidate. In any event, Vance and Oz together made the announcement. Oz is the administrator for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. They said the administration was taking the action in order to ensure that the state of Minnesota takes its obligations seriously to be good stewards of the American people's tax money. Oz, who referred to people committing fraud as, quote, self-serving scoundrels, there's an old-fashioned term. In any event, Dr. Oz said the federal government would hold off on paying $259.5 million to Minnesota in funding for Medicaid, the healthcare safety net for low-income Americans. Now, it seems that to withhold Medicaid funds for ordinary citizens who have no implication or indication that they ever committed fraud or cheated the government or have charges against them is going to be cruel and controversial. Speaking of controversial, there is a new poll on Trump that takes a different question before the public. It has to do with Trump's mental health. And the story reports that concerns about President Donald Trump's mental fitness are approaching levels comparable to those that forced Joe Biden from the 2024 presidential race. What forced Joe Biden from the 2024 presidential race was his incredibly feeble, completely incompetent, and unprepared performance in a debate in a very public stage, where, after having given a State of the Union address that a lot of people said that was reassuring, it was feisty, it was energetic, he was pathetic. He was beyond pathetic. He was scary and dangerous and unable to perform in public in the debate that he had with Donald Trump. So he was forced to resign, and then, of course, through his support to Kamala Harris, and the rest is history, as they say. Multiple recent polls today show big majorities of Americans who question the 79-year-old president's cognitive capacity. We're talking about now President Trump. Like President Biden, they also question his physical stamina, including a Reuters Ipsos poll released before the State of the Union that found 61%, including 30% of Republicans, in other words, a third of all people who say, yeah, I'm a Republican, a third of those people agree that Trump has, quote, become erratic with age. My answer to that would be, I think he's always been kind of erratic. If you look back at his career and his career in business and with Atlantic City casinos and various fraudulent activities, he's always been erratic. It didn't take advancing into his 70s and soon to be his 80s to show erratic aspects of the Trumpian personality. A CNN survey showed that those confident in Trump's, quote, stamina and sharpness to serve effectively as president declined from 53%, a small majority, in late 2023, down to 46% today, a minority. A Washington Post ABC News Ipsos poll found 56% doubt his mental sharpness and 51% his physical health, representing increases of 13 points and 23 points, respectively, since May of 2023. That is before he won his election to the presidency in that very bitterly fought and close race, as it turned out to be. Meanwhile, speaking of close races, the preliminary Nielsen ratings indicate that President Trump's 2026 State of the Union address, which he delivered on Tuesday night, as everyone remembers, drew a disappointing audience. Only 27.8 million viewers from across the 7 major networks. This 107-minute record-length speech saw a 12% decline from the 31.45 million viewers who watched his 2025 address to Congress. That is the note and the report in the Hollywood Reporter. There's more. Fox News led the way with 9.1 million viewers, well in front of ABC's 5.1 million viewers. Now, why is that relevant? It indicates that most of the people who watched the speech were people who were already sympathetic to President Trump. And this monitored the total number of viewers for ABC, CBS, CNN. Fox News was the leader, Fox Broadcast Network, MS Now, and NBC. The total amount down from 12%, from 31.45 million viewers for these same networks for Trump's address to Congress last year, which was technically not a State of the Union address. There is more coming up about a third way in American politics, a third way proclaimed by Lanny Davis and seemingly endorsed by people like Bill Clinton and Rahm Emanuel, and we'll get to that coming up on the Medved Show. Concerning the ratings for the State of the Union address, where you got to think, after watching the whole thing several times, he's still speaking somewhere. There's somewhere in one of our parallel universes where the president is continuing his 1 hour and 47-minute speech. But there is a note, and good for them for making this note. The Hollywood Reporter, in reporting on the ratings for the president's speech, they say that a decline for the State of the Union in terms of ratings a year after a president takes office is fairly common in recent history. Following their initial addresses to Congress shortly after taking office, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and Trump in his first term all drew smaller audiences for the next year's State of the Union. That's partially because the novelty is worn off. You feel like I've likely heard this all before, and I think that a lot of people who started maybe with some interest in the State of the Union did feel like there was a great deal of familiar material. I mean, even his exaggerations, the stuff about ending 8 wars, the stuff about the gas prices being about half of what they actually are, that stuff was already old. And the one thing that they don't note in the State of the Union ratings story is the fact that the other presidents they mentioned, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and Trump in his first term, all had disastrous midterm elections. Disastrous midterm elections. Bill Clinton managed after his first and second State of the Union addresses, he managed to lose the House and the Senate both for the first time in 40 years. It was a wipeout for Democrats. Same thing was true for Barack Obama. The same thing was true for Trump, who lost 43 seats in the House. So this is not good news necessarily, the decline in ratings. Decline in ratings for other presidents were not so much there. The exceptions were that George W. Bush in 2000 for his speech, which was the Axis of Evil speech that was written largely by David Frum, who's a guest on this show from time to time. Meanwhile, that speech had very strong ratings, particularly compared to what happened with President Trump. That hasn't stopped, by the way, President Trump from already releasing an ad that featured a moment from the State of the Union address. I think it's fairly obvious what that moment would be. The story reports that President Trump and Republicans have released an ad already based on his State of the Union speech where he called on members of Congress to stand if they believe the American government's primary duty is to protect American citizens and not illegal aliens. The words on the screen say Democrats are for illegal immigrants, Republicans are for you. Seems like a powerful political message. This is very similar to the Trump ad during the presidential election, which stated Kamala is for they, them, Trump is for you. Here is what the ad sounded like, clip 9.
If you agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. These people are crazy.
Okay, there is the ad from that highlight of President Trump's State of the Union address. What's interesting about it is he can be very forceful when he delivers lines. He wasn't forceful in delivering that line, partially because that whole choice, the idea that you either are going to protect American citizens or you're going to protect illegal aliens who by definition cannot vote and do not vote. And one of the great lies that President Trump put forward in the State of the Union address, and he's done many other times, is the idea that there are millions of unauthorized people who cast votes despite the fact that they're not citizens. It is not true. And it has been fact-checked and corrected by everybody. And speaking of fact-checked and corrected, the Dispatch is reporting that Casey Means, a wellness influencer who served as a campaign advisor for Robert F. Kennedy's embarrassing presidential run and is now Trump's nominee for Surgeon General, despite the fact that she's not a practicing physician. She left the medical field, but now she's supposed to be our new Attorney General. She testified before the Senate Health, Education, and Labor Committee, which questioned her stances on vaccines, hormonal contraception, and antidepressants, often citing her past statements questionable and questioning the widespread use of such medications. Anti-vaccine rhetoric has never been a part of my message, she insisted, after being asked about her previous claim that vaccines were causing health declines in vulnerable children. But when pressed by both Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican, and Senator Bernie Sanders, independent, of course, Dr. Means, if she can still use that title that she doesn't use professionally anymore, she declined to rule out vaccines as a contributor to autism, despite decades of research finding no causes for the condition. She also initially resisted saying whether she would explicitly support universal childhood hepatitis B vaccinations before conceding to Dr. Cassidy, yes, he is a physician, that children should at some point get the vaccine. And she sparred with Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia, a Democrat, over the benefits of a flu vaccination, dodging repeated questions on whether it reduces hospitalization and deaths. Dr. Nasha Patel, who is an MD and someone who comments on medical issues, says doctors I would trust before I'd trust Casey Means to be Surgeon General. Dr. Pepper, Dr. Jekyll, Dr. Strange, Dr. Seuss, Doctor Who, Dr. McDreamy, Dr. Doolittle, Dr. Evil, Dr. Mario, Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, Dr. House. It's a joke, she says, but it doesn't change that she is seriously unqualified. Meanwhile, that mystery about the attack by Cuban forces against an American registered ship, more on that coming up on the Medved Show.
Medved.
A number of people who are questioning the nomination of Casey Means as the new Surgeon General of the United States basically bring up the point that she is a former physician who left her residency and does not currently hold an active medical license to treat patients. So she is the one who is up for confirmation as the chief doctor in the United States, the Surgeon General, which is a prestigious and influential position. That's not a terrific idea that meets the approval of Senator Bill Cassidy, who is a working physician and a Republican and a loyal supporter of President Trump, but can't go along with this particular nomination, partially because she is so closely associated with Robert Kennedy Jr., who has been hugely controversial and has put forward as part of his MAHA program, the Make America Healthy Again, so many questionable accounts. For instance, about measles outbreaks, which have been spread nationwide. Dr. Cassidy, who's also Senator Cassidy and is obviously going to be influential on this committee, which is going to be voting on approval or disapproval of Casey Means. Here's part of what he had to say about her nomination as Surgeon General. This is clip 19.
Had 2 children die from measles in West Texas. We now have an outbreak of like 1,000 children almost in South Carolina area. You're a mom. We're on the verge of losing our measles elimination status. Would you encourage other mothers to have their children vaccinated against measles with the MMR vaccine?
Like you, I'm a physician. I believe vaccines save lives. I believe that vaccines are a key part of any infectious disease public health strategy. And I would work with you, the CDC, the NIH, ACIP,
But would you
FDA.
encourage mothers to vaccinate their children with the MMR vaccine, seeing how we've had children die and this outbreak in South Carolina?
I'm supportive of vaccination. I do believe that each patient, mother, parent needs to have a conversation with their pediatrician about any medication they're putting in their body or their children's bodies.
You're the nation's doctor. Would you encourage her to have her child vaccinated?
I'm not an individual's doctor, and every individual needs to talk to their doctor before putting a medication in their body. I absolutely am supportive of the measles vaccine, and I do believe vaccines save lives and are an important part of the public health strategy.
That at least indicates some difference in attitude from Robert Kennedy. By the way, she's also a recent mother. She delivered, I think it's less than a year ago, a new baby. Her nomination hearing, her confirmation hearing to be the Surgeon General of the United States, ran into some sharp opposition, including from Senator Patty Murray, the veteran Democrat and high-ranking Democrat by means of seniority from Washington State. Because one of the issues here had to do with birth control. We're not now talking about abortion. We're talking about birth control, which is overwhelmingly supported not just by the medical community as an alternative, but by the American people in terms of what people employ in their own lives. This is Senator Murray on Casey Means and her connection to and attitude toward birth control. Clip 20.
You called birth control pills, and I'm going to quote, a disrespect of life. And you said Americans, quote, use birth control pills like candy.
We prescribe a huge amount of hormonal contraceptive, and I do not believe most of those conversations have informed consent.
That exchange just happened. Here's the thing. Of course, you should talk to your doctor before taking birth control. That is true of any medication. If you can't say birth control is safe and effective for the overwhelming majority of women with your whole chest, you should not be America's top doctor. God knows we don't need more junk science peddlers in this government. I will not vote for Casey Means as Surgeon General. I am voting no.
A Washington Post examination last year found that Casey Means had made over $500,000 from partnerships with companies that her financial forms described as selling, quote, diagnostic testing, herbal remedies and wellness products, and, quote, teas, that's TEAS, different kinds of tea, supplements, and elixirs. Elixirs, almost by definition, do not work. They just work in fairy tales. She has been involved in those companies from 2024 into the summer of 2025, last year, according to her financial disclosures. Legal and advertising experts told the Washington Post last fall that they were concerned about whether Casey Means clearly disclosed her ties to some brands. And Senator Tammy Baldwin, Democrat of Wisconsin, grilled Casey Means on some of her connections to wellness products. It seemed to me that you've spent your career sort of making money off the flaws in the healthcare system, said Senator Tammy Baldwin. It does look like this nomination could be in trouble, depending on the position of Senator Cassidy and a handful of other Republicans, but there isn't much Democratic support for Casey Means as a new Surgeon General for the United States. The other story that is getting attention is that Cuba said that its border guard troops shot and killed 4 armed people on a speedboat in Cuban waters who were attempting to, quote, infiltrate the island nation for terrorist purposes. Local authorities said the boat was registered in Florida and was carrying Cubans who live in the U.S., one of whom allegedly opened fire on the Cuban forces. 6 others on the speedboat were apparently wounded and are now detained in Cuba. The incident happened yesterday off Cuba's northern coast, following weeks of simmering tensions between the U.S. and the communist island. For a variety of reasons, the simmering tensions with Cuba are being grouped together with the tensions with Iran, which continue to be serious with so much American force being moved to the vicinity of Iran, and people still worrying about what happens next in terms of the potential war with the nation of 90 million people. And I repeat that because it's easy to think of Iran as one of those small, basically irrelevant Middle Eastern nations, thinking of it as the equivalent of Yemen, for instance. Yemen is important because of where it is, but Iran is important because of the very size of that government and the evil and dangerous nature of that government. Meanwhile, on another war front, a group of Ukrainian officials will meet with Witkoff and Kushner, the two representatives for the Trump administration, in Geneva today, as the two countries, that is Ukraine and the United States, prepare for another round of trilateral talks in Florida. The discussions are expected to focus on elements of a potential post-war recovery framework for Ukraine, as well as groundwork for the forthcoming trilateral session. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he has instructed his chief negotiator, Rustem Umerov, to raise the possibility of a new prisoner exchange. We will get to that and more. Is there a third way in American politics? Something that isn't either just MAGA or anti-MAGA? Something different and valuable? Possible, says Lanny Davis, coming up in This Greatest Nation on God's Green Earth.